Okay, today we'll be going back to, that's kind of low. Today we'll be going back to ACT English. So we've already covered, the first 2 times I was here, we went over all of the grammar, great start. We went over all of the punctuation, right? And that fits into that first, we had 3 different categories they gave you on the first day. I don't know if you guys are remembering that, but the third category was like conventions of standard English. That covers a little under half of your test, probably like high 30s, low 40s percentage points of the test. And so the structures we talked about last time, all of those punctuation structures we talked about the first 2 classes, that fits there. And then I'm going to tell you basically the other half of that, which is typically grammatical structures and things that are grammatical versus agrammatical. Those things will be discussed today, and then after today, every other time I'm here, we'll spend most of the time practicing, just going through the book. Because those things, those process-based questions, I don't really have rules for you. I have certain strategical things you could do, but those are thinkers. You really have to think your way through it and actually solve the problems rather than just, kind of apply a rule or something like that. So we'll go over exactly how to handle those. Probably next time I'm here, we'll do a bunch of practice with those, but for now, this will be the last time that I'm really just going to talk at you. The other times will be much more involved in discussion. We'll be talking about different questions and how to handle them and stuff, but this is the last time you're kind of just going to have to take a few notes here. Okay, it's important. I need you guys to participate today especially because there's going to be a lot of questions. I'm going to put up a rule and then an example. And it's only going to help you if you engage in the example. So pay attention to it. Vote on the examples if I'm giving you a vote. Tell me what's wrong if I'm asking what's wrong. It's going to be really helpful, not for you, but for everybody. Well, also for you, but not just for you, I should say. Okay, let's start with the first rule. This is one. I'm calling these, there's just going to be 10 of them. I'm calling them like golden grammar rules. I can't cover every single grammar concept you could possibly see on the test. This should cover something like 90% of it. So there may be a little bit of thinking and figuring out, but I've condensed just in 10 rules basically everything. Not all of it, I'm not going to guarantee that, but basically everything that you can see grammatically. So here's the general ones. These are going to be important. So these 10 you're going to see a lot. Starting with, I'm sure you've learned this in school, subjects and verbs should agree. Okay, I'm sure you already know that. It's not anything new. Here's the important part. I'm going to say, and ignore interrupting phrases. So what the ACT is very good at is they're going to give you a subject, they're going to put a bunch of blabber in between it, and then they're going to put the verb. And they're going to blabber so much that you're going to forget, actually, wait, what was the verb again? Or the subject, I don't even remember. Because they put all of this nonsense in between to make you forget. So I'll give you a really shortened example of that, and you'll see what I mean to a greater extent, and then exactly how to approach. When you see, okay, the question is asking about agreement, what do I do? This is how to handle it. So the example is, I don't know if that's how you spell bouquet, but whatever. Zoom, can you guys read that? Is it like, I'll read them out loud anyway, but can you guys see? Yeah? Okay. So the sentence reads, the bouquet of flowers is beautiful, are beautiful. So I'm going to give you 2 options. Typically you have 4, right? I'll give you 2 to start. How many people think the bouquet of flowers is beautiful? On Zoom, you can just hit the emoji if you don't want to talk, but you can also talk. Okay. How many people think the bouquet of flowers are beautiful? Okay. I'm seeing more are than is. The answer is The reason is you have to figure out what exactly the subject is, and then the verb, and then agree those two things, and ignore everything in between. So the reason that I bring this example up is because it's a very, very common missed question on the ACT so far. And the reason for that is because of this interrupting phrase of flowers. So when you're hearing, a lot of the times what people do when they're dealing with agreement is because we all have some sort of conception of the agreement already. You know what it's supposed to sound like. You don't go through and you're like, well, I need this to be conjugated in this way. No, you just feel it. Because you all speak English, you know. So what you're hearing is, flowers are beautiful. Yeah, that's true. If the subject were flowers, you would say are. The tricky part is the subject is the bouquet. So when you recognize the subject, the first thing you do is, okay, subject. Here, verb. This is the trick. I'm going to ask you to do this every single time you see a question that you've identified is asking for agreement. I'm literally going to ask you to do this with your pencil. Cross out everything in between and connect these two things. Now, if you read it out loud, if you just read the subject and the verb out loud, you will never, ever, ever get a question like this wrong. I hope, nobody in this class is going to read, the bouquet are beautiful. I guarantee you none of you are going to do that, right? The bouquet is beautiful. That becomes obvious. But the way that you do it is you need to identify the subject first, circle it, circle or underline the verb. Underlining I don't really mind. But please mark somehow the subject and the verb. And then when you put them, squash them together, the answer is going to become extremely obvious to you. Does that first rule make sense? Okay. Good. So, it is very important. Identify the subject, circle it, put it together. That's rule number 1. Okay. Rule number 2 is extremely similar, but it's just for a different class of words. So, pronouns must agree, and here's the new part, in gender and in number to their, this may be a new word for some people, it doesn't really matter, antecedents. Okay, I don't actually care if you know what the word antecedent means. An antecedent is simply what the pronoun is referring to. Let's say Rakav is teaching. He is teaching, right? He is referring to Rakav. Rakav is the antecedent. Whatever the pronoun is referring to, that's the antecedent. Okay, in case we aren't familiar, pronouns are words that stand in for subjects. He, him, she, her, them, they, who, whom. All of these are different types of pronouns, right? I know that in society it's a little bit different because there are times where you can use a pronoun of they or them to talk about a singular person. On the ACT, they aren't really going to address that. If you see the word they, it's plural. If you see the word them, it's plural. If you see he, him, she, her, those are singular. That's how the ACT is handling that. So just for the test's sake, try to be in with that. And then they need to agree in both gender and number, and but a lot of other languages, if a word is plural, you still have to worry about its gender. In English, we don't really have that, where if a word is plural, you're just going to use the pronouns of their, they, them. That's it. So you don't have to worry about the gender, regardless of what the gender is for the plural antecedent. So if it's plural, focus on the number. If it's singular, the number is 1, you need to pay attention to the gender. That's the general idea with pronouns. They need to agree. Okay, I'm going to give 2 different examples here. Let's start with just the first one. We'll vote on that one, and then we'll go to the next one. The sentence reads, the players went back to their locker room or the players went back to his locker room. We're going to do another vote on this one. How many people think the players went back to their locker room? Okay. How many people think the players went back to his locker room? Okay. So you guys are correct. Whoa, I almost just fell over. There is the correct answer here. The reason is you need to figure out what's the antecedent, right? In this case, antecedent is here. Players, plural. So you need a pronoun that reflects the plurality. His is singular, so it can't be that. Therefore, there would be correct. So that one, typically, you don't need to like do the whole thing that I told you to do with agreement, right? Cross this out. Okay, here's the pronoun. Here's the antecedent. Now smash them together. You probably don't need to do that for ones like this. I understand that. I still recommend that you do it because it's just going to help you prevent mistakes. It's going to help you catch things that maybe right now seem easy, but on test day might slip underneath you. So doing too much work to get the right answer is not a big deal because you got the right answer, right? And the most important thing on this test is just doing well. So get as many questions right as you can. And if this is the way you do it, then do that. That's great. I do recommend that you still do this even if the answer is obvious. Okay, let's do one more example. This one's a little more tricky. Okay, that question reads, each of the boys danced with their partner. Each of the boys danced with his partner. Okay. How many people think each of the boys danced with their partner? Okay. How many people think each of the boys danced with his partner? Nice. I'm happy with that. I hope you didn't just pick that because I said it was going to be tricky, but a lot of people did pick his. Can someone who picked his explain why did they do that?
It refers to each one of the boys.
Exactly, yes. So the antecedent in this case isn't just the boys, it's each of the boys, right? So that's actually singular. And if that's slightly confusing, if you're like, well, how do I know if it's... I have a really great rule for that. So quickly go over that right now. And it's still in the same rule. It's still underneath that second rule of pronouns need to agree with their antecedents. This is just like a sub rule of that. And the rule reads like this. And it's written like this very intentionally. The rule is each is one body. So it tells you each is one body. It's singular. But what else is convenient about this is any word that contains each, one or body, is singular. So each of the boys. If you said one, every one of the boys, no one of the boys, something like that. Body, anybody, nobody, those type of words. Anything that contains these three words is singular. It's one body. So you're going to have to use singular pronoun. Does that make sense? This is really funny when I look back on it. It just looks like a blank. I can't tell if you guys are reacting or not. It's just like a blank screen. So I was like, okay, no one's listening. But okay, people are listening. Good. Nice. Yes, this is a really helpful trick to remember. I'm impressed that a lot of you already knew this anyway. It seems like a lot of people did pick the correct answer on that last one, but this is just a nice way to verbalize it in case that's a new concept. So, good. Okay. Let's go to our third rule. We're going to stick with pronouns here. Another pronoun rule. Pronouns should be in the correct case. And the two cases, subjective, objective. This is really conveniently named because they tell you exactly what they do. Unfortunately, this doesn't work like this in every single subject when you're naming things. For example, I'm currently a chemistry student in college. Chemistry is pretty good about this, but that means I take a lot of biology. And there are so many things in human biology that are just named random things after people that discovered them rather than what they actually do. So it makes it very confusing and hard to memorize. Conveniently, these things are named exactly for their function. Subjective pronoun acts as the subject of a sentence. Objective pronoun acts as the object of a sentence. Really helpful. Okay, how do you tell, well, which one's subjective and which one's objective? When I'm thinking about, for example, he and him, which one is, I don't know. There's a really nice way to handle that. This rule, before I get into that, have you guys ever had someone at school that was like, if you're like, oh yeah, last weekend me and my friend did this, and they're like, my friend and I, that's what this rule is about. It's the correct case of the pronoun. That really annoying kid, half of the time is right and half of the time is wrong, and I will show you why. Okay, how do I know which one's subjective, which one's objective? Here's the trick. You write a really simple sentence that has a subject and an object. So the way that I do it and the way that I typically teach my students is blank told blank. So in this sentence, you have a clear subject that's doing the action and an object that's receiving the action, right? So subject, object. Now whatever you plug in here tells you which one's subjective and which one's objective. So I'm confused, he or him. Would you say him told he or he told him? Everyone's going to say he told him, right? I hope so. I hope no one's thinking him told me. He told him. There you go. He subjective, him objective. Problem solved. You can do the same thing with any pair of pronouns you need. So let's say you're confused about she and her. She told her, her told she. You know she told her. Okay, she subjective. You can also do this with plural pronouns. Okay, them told they told them. Okay, they told them. That's right. So subjective they, objective them. You can do this with anything, any type of two pronouns. The one that really trips people up is who and whom. Do you guys have trouble with this sometimes, who and whom? I know a lot of my students do in the past. So here's the trick with that one specifically. Who is an analog to he, whom is an analog to him. And the way that I remember this is they both end in M. So whom, him, who, he. If you can fit him into the sentence, use whom. So if you were saying like, who told whom, not whom told who. Does that make sense? I know this part's kind of confusing, but if you get stuck with like, is it who or is it whom, try plugging in he or him, and it will tell you which one's right. So at least is this part clear to everybody? How you're supposed to figure out what's subjective and what's objective? Okay. Okay, good. I'm seeing more than one thumbs up, so that's good. That means at least a few people got it. Cool. Let's move to, now how do I apply this? So let's say, I'm going to give you, let's do this one actually, yeah. This is a helpful example. No, I want to do it the other way. Okay, here's a question. Gina and he are the cutest couple. Gina and him are the cutest couple at school. There's two different options. Now go through the process we just talked about. Okay, is this thing that I'm talking about, the pronoun that I'm selecting, is it acting as the subject or the object of the sentence? Okay, subject or object. You figured that out. Now, which pronoun is subjective, which one is objective? Him told he or he told him? Okay, now you have the answer. right? So follow that thought process to make sure that you're getting. Don't use what sounds right. I'll give you another 10 seconds to think about it, and then we're going to vote. Okay. How many people think Gina and he are the cutest couple at school? Okay. How many people think Gina and him are the cutest couple at school? Okay. This is a great example of, I apologize, I intentionally tricked you. I apologize. It's my fault, but I wanted to prove the point. Normally, you wouldn't say Gina and he, right, because that sounds silly, but the correct answer is he, here. You would normally say he and Gina, not Gina and he. That's why it's intentionally deceptive. But the reason I asked this question is because I don't want you to pick what sounds right in these cases. Because Gina and him sounds better than Gina and he. However, if you follow the process, right? Okay, this is what I'm looking at. Gina and he are, okay, so they are acting on something else, right? This is the subject of the sentence. Okay, now I need a subjective subjective pronoun. Is it he told him or him told he? He told him. So he is subjective, right? So I need he here. Does that make sense? Does it make sense why that's supposed to be? Okay. So the idea is you needed to figure out first subject, okay, subjective, he. Even though Gina and him sounds better, right? So that's why I did this on purpose. Let me give you one more example just to drill in this point. And I'm going to give you two options. The two options now are the gift is from she and I, the gift is from me and her. Okay, how many people think the first option, the gift is from she and I? Okay, how many people think the gift is from me and her? Good. Happy to see that. So, in this case, the gift is acting as the subject. And it's from the object, right? So the object here, we're looking for objective case. I know this one's a little bit weird, but I told me makes more sense than me told I. I know they're both ridiculous, but we're looking for me and we're looking for her. So me and her would be the best answer here. Does that make sense? If you see this on the test, do you think you could handle this now? Yeah. And again, I just want to reemphasize this. If you have a question, if you're confused, if something didn't make sense, I'm not going to know unless someone says something. So if you're confused, I have literally no problem if you have to interrupt me and just unmute yourself and talk. So if you're confused, please say that. It's probably going to help someone else. But if we have no more questions about this one, then we'll move on. Okay. No one's saying anything, so I'm hoping that means we're good. Let's go to fourth rule now. We're going to stick... Are we done pronouns now? I can't remember. Normally I have another one. No, that one's later. Okay. This one is new. If you've taken a class with me before, I don't typically use this in grammar rules. But I've been adding it recently because I do think it's very relevant now. And it's that versus which. So when do you use that? When do you use which? Both of those are they're kind of the same. The school that I went to, the school which I went to, they both sound okay, right? And they both are okay, but it depends on the context. So they do have distinct meanings. It's not like an author's choice where you could choose this one or you could choose this one. There is a grammatical, this is the right answer, this is why. So this is a rule. So don't confuse this. There's one of them that's right and one of them that's wrong, depending on the context. So here's the context. That means that the clause that's attached to it is essential. And if you're going to use that, no comma. On the other hand, which is for non-essential phrases or clauses. And if you're going to use which, you need a comma. So what's the difference between non-essential and essential? Okay, essential means that if I were to remove this clause, the sentence changes in meaning. Non-essential means if I were to remove this clause, the sentence loses something, but it doesn't change its meaning. It still means the same thing. So I'm going to give you two discrete examples. I'm going to say the exact same sentence, and I'm going to use that, and I'm going to use which. But the context of the situations is different. And that's the important part. So I'm showing you that they both can be grammatically correct. It just depends on the situation. So let's say first situation. We're talking about a book. And I'm not familiar with this book. I don't know what you're telling me about. But you're telling me about this book that you like and that it's very difficult to find. But I don't know what book we're talking about. That's the important part. I don't know the book right now. Then you could say this. I'm going to box in this part right here. That's the clause that we're looking at. So remember, I don't know the book that you're telling me, right? And then you told me the book that won the award is hard to find. So the book that won the award, now I know what book you're talking about. It's the one that won the award, right? So I didn't know before, and that won the award is essential information to the sentence, right? It's actually describing what book you're talking about. Does that make sense so far? So this clause is essential. Is that clear? Okay. I know this is hard to follow, but this is the way, this rule is very confusing. Okay, that is for essential. Now, imagine I'm going to change the situation. We're talking about this book, and you say it's about Harry Potter. We're talking about the first Harry Potter book. I was like, yeah, I really like that book. And you're telling me about, yeah, but that book is hard to find. Okay, now you can say, since we both know the book we're talking about, the book, and now remember, if you're going to use which, you need a comma. I'm going to box in, again, the phrase that we're looking at, the clause that we're looking at. Now, based on the new situation, this is the correct way to say it. The book which won the award is hard to find. It's okay to say that now because which won the award is now, by the way, information. It's not essential to the sentence, right? Because if you just said the book is hard to find, I would be like, yeah, Harry Potter is hard to find, right? In the first one, I don't know what the book is. So if you just said the book is hard to find, I would be like, what book are you talking about? But then when you say the book that won the award, oh, now I know what you're talking about. Does that, I know this isn't like the cleanest and easiest thing to understand. Does that make sense? Okay, good. That makes me happy. This is a very hard rule to explain, so I'm glad that there's thumbs up there. Okay, awesome. I'm sure we will see this in practice too, so you can get a better feel of exactly how to handle it. But that's the gist of it. Okay. Fifth rule here. Sentences should be written in parallel form. Okay. I know some of you have already learned this before. Some of you might have seen parallel form in school. If not, I think this is probably one of the most intuitive rules. This is where you can really trust your intuition. A lot of these I'm telling you not to trust your intuition and pick what's rules right. This one, typically your intuition is going to tell you the right thing. But just in case, I'll give an example before we talk about what parallel form is. Okay, currently the sentence reads, he loves hiking, to swim, and biking. This is fine, right? Can someone tell me what would make this sentence better?
To turn to swim into swimming.
Yes, exactly right. The reason is we are already developing a parallel form. Hiking, biking, to swim. You can just see that you're breaking the pattern, right? This should be swimming. So this is what parallel form means. When you're doing a comparison or when you're having a list, keep the things you're listing or you're comparing in the same form. That's going to make it easier to digest for the reader and not make your sentences sound so choppy. So even though he loves to swim, it's fine. The ACT is going to say, this is not an author's choice. This is the way it should be written. So if you see something and there's an option for parallel form, pick the parallel form option because that's the correct one. And this applies to comparisons, not just lists. When you're comparing two things, they still need to be in the same structure. Does that make sense? This one shouldn't be like too confusing. You'll be able to pick this one out. It's fairly intuitive, but yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next rule then. All right. This one's a little bit tricky, so keep verb tenses constant unless a clear frame or time shift, sorry, not frame shift, jeez. Unless there's a clear time shift. This isn't generally applicable to life. This is generally applicable to the ACT. So, in general, if a sentence is written with a certain tense, if we're talking in the past tense, you should stay in the past tense unless it gives you a reason to go forward. And a lot of the times, we use conjugations as indications of shifts in time. We don't use time shifts very often. With that being said, on the ACT, they're not going to do that. They'll give you a frame shift, why do I keep saying that? They'll give you a time shift if they want you to change the tense. So let me give you an example of a sentence that's perfectly reasonable. You understand what it means, I'll understand what it means, but the ACT is going to ask you to change it. Okay. Right now the sentence reads, she studied hard for her test and feels very prepared. I mean, a sentence is fine, right? We both understand the meaning. You guys will understand what she means. I understand what she means. Why is the ACT going to have a problem with this? How could you correct this on the ACT?
Because it goes from past tense to present.
Yes, exactly. So what could you change?
You could change feels to felt.
Exactly right, yes. So this is fine, right? I know what she means, but the ACT is going to prefer that you say felt here, right? Because studied, felt. We want them both to be past tense. Now, well then, how are they ever going to change tense? Well, they'll give you a clear time shift. So what that means is like, yesterday she studied or something. Yesterday means you're in the past tense. Or maybe this says she studied hard for her test and now feels very prepared. So now is the one that's going to shift the time for you. Someone have their hand raised?
If we were provided with this sentence and we had to choose like whether to make study, like to keep studied past and to change feels into felt, or to make it she studies hard for her test and feels very prepared, would you have to choose like what would you choose? Would you just choose it like based on the first tense?
Yeah, they won't ever ask you. That's a good question, first of all. But they won't ever. So do you know how the ACT typically writes it, where they like underline a portion and ask you to change it? They won't underline both tenses. So there'll always be one tense to refer back to. So it might be behind the sentence. It might be like she studied hard, or it might, and then it'll underline this. So you're changing feels to felt. Or it might just underline this and leave this. So if the question read, she studies hard for her test and felt very prepared, you know you want to change this to studied, right? But if it only underlined this, then you want to change this to felt. Does that make sense? So they won't make you change both. They'll only make you change one. Does that make sense? Okay. And the one thing, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the one thing is, sometimes, I mean, the way that you handle the test is you're reading it in order, right? You're reading from top to bottom. Sometimes the tense that you're referring to that's going to tell you what tense to be in is after. So sometimes it's not a bad idea to just keep reading a sentence beyond, look for the tense there, and then refer back to the question that you're doing. So sometimes the tense is already stated in a previous sentence, sometimes it's stated in the next sentence. So just pay attention and follow the tense that it wants you to, unless it gives you a clear time shift. Then you can obviously use the time shift. Okay. Here's another one. This one I'm about to tell you was extremely present on the old format. I would be surprised if it is not present on the new format. So I'm going to tell you, I'm basically guaranteeing this is going to be at least one question, if not more, on your test. The rule is you need to place modifiers directly next to whatever they're modifying. Let me give you an example. I'm trying to think of how to do this properly so that it makes the most sense. I'm going to give you two sentences. You as an English speaker are going to read the same thing. You're going to read both and the meaning's going to be the same. However, one of them is grammatically correct and one of them isn't. And you have to imagine yourself as someone who doesn't speak English or in a more confusing context for this to make sense, why it's confusing. Because you'll autocorrect it in your mind. But here's what I mean. Okay, here's two sentences, and they mean the same thing to you, right? While running down the hill, I saw my house. Cool. While running down the hill, my house came into my view. Cool. They both mean the same thing, right? You're running down the hill, and you look, and oh, there's my house. right? I mean, that's what we're all reading from these. However, the second one, as a non-English speaker, the way that they teach English, right? The idea is when you have a modifier, whatever's next to it is what's being modified. While running down the hill, okay, so that means I was running down the hill. In this case, while running down the hill, my house, okay, so this one's actually saying the house is running down the hill, and then you see it from the bottom of the hill. That's not what you're saying, right? You mean to say that I was running down the hill, and then I saw the house, right? So if you were asked to pick between these two, the top one is correct, the bottom one is incorrect. Because while running down the hill, modifier, needs to be directly next to what it's modifying, which is I, not the house. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Good. I'm basically guaranteeing that this is going to be on the test. I'm like 95+% sure that this will be on the test. So, learn that one if you don't know it already. Okay, just a few more here, and then we'll be done. Okay, this one, if you're going to learn literally nothing from anything I've ever said, please remember this rule I'm about to tell you. This is like the most important thing I'm going to say out of all of the classes. So, if you take nothing from me, take this. This rule is called the economy rule. I'm sure I've already said it, and I will probably say it like 10 more times, because it's that important. If you're, literally you could just use this rule and probably get a 50% of the test without knowing anything else. It's that important. The idea is, if you can say something in less words without losing meaning, then every single time you should do that. If you can say something with less words, just say it in less words. I'm not saying that you should do this in life, because there's a lot of times, a lot of situations in real life where using more words or repeating yourself or being redundant emphasizes a point, right? When you're writing poetry, you see people use repetition all the time because that's essential to conveying the meaning that you want to. However, in prose form, on the ACT, repeating yourself or being redundant is like the worst thing you could possibly do. It's like, some will go so far as to say that, like, if you repeat something, you're calling the reader stupid, that they didn't understand it the first time. So it's like literally the worst thing you could possibly do. I'm going to give you an example here that's taken from an actual test, and it hurts me to even write it on the board because it's so horrible. But you'll see what I'm saying. This is a phrase that was written on an actual test. I just want to keep this in mind. This was a real example. I'm not making this one up. Actually, I don't think it said so. It was. This was missed way more than I expected. And I think the idea is, like, a lot of people do choose longer answers because they think it makes them sound smart, or like it sounds like they have a better vocabulary or something. But based on this rule, you should just pick the shortest answer most of the time. The shortest answer is probably right. So this sentence actually appeared on the test. The joke was funny, comical, and humorous because it made me laugh. Okay, I don't know how good your guys' vocabularies are, but comical, funny, and humorous mean precisely the exact same thing. Like, literally that you cannot even differentiate between them. So, do I need to say the joke was funny, comical, and humorous? No, I could just choose any one of those words. Let's just go with funny. I don't need that. Because it made me laugh. Okay, it was funny, so it made you laugh. Duh. Probably don't need that either. So how about we just say the joke was funny, instead of saying all this extra stuff that means the same thing, right? I didn't lose any meaning. The sentences mean the same thing. I just cut out a bunch of words that didn't need to be there. So you will see this happen all the time, so often on the test. If you could say something in less words, just please just use the least amount of words. If you're really confused and you can't pick between two, just pick the shorter one. Like most of the time that's going to be right. Does that make sense? Okay. Good. This, I cannot emphasize how important this is. This is literally like, if you're going to learn nothing, learn this. Okay, last two here. This is one last pronoun rule here. If pronouns aren't clear, then just rename them. And it will be very, very helpful to your reader. Rename them. Sorry. For example. The example on the board right now reads, when Jim went to meet Jerry, he was late. Okay, well, was Jim late or was Jerry late? I don't know. Because who is he, right? He could be either of them. So in this case, you probably shouldn't say he here. You should say Jim or Jerry. Whichever one was actually late is who you should use there. Does that make sense? If it's not clear, you should just rename it. Okay, nice. Last thing here before we are done. This one isn't exactly a rule. It's just like a culmination of a bunch of different things that I didn't want to turn into their old rules. So I'm just going to talk through these really quick and make sure you guys know the difference. So these are just some commonly confused words. And I'm pretty sure some of you have wondered all of these or had trouble with all of these in the past. So we're going to quickly just go over what each of them means. So starting with, we should all know this one now. It's IT apostrophe S. It's ITS. You guys know the difference between these? What's the difference? Can someone tell me? We talked about this one.
The first.
Go ahead.
The first one is it's the I forgot what it's called. It means it is,
yeah.
And the second one means the possessive.
Exactly right. Yes, I think you're looking for contraction, right? Like when you take something to. But yeah, it is. This means it belongs to it, right? This is the possessive. This is it is. So this is the only time it's okay to use possession without an apostrophe. So those are commonly confused. At this point, we should all know that, right? We got that one. Okay, how about THEN, then, versus THAN, than? Does anyone know the difference between these? If you don't, that's fine. I can just talk about it. But does anyone know? Do you know?
I mean, like, then if you could use it as like, then I did this and this, but then is like greater than this.
Exactly. Yeah. Right on the head. So then THEN is chronological. It's about time. I did this, then I did this, then I did that. So if you can replace it with later or after that or something like that, then THEN is what you're looking for. That's time. THAN is a comparison. He is taller than she is. She is smarter than he is. This number is greater than that one. So than THAN is used for comparing two things, whereas THEN is used for putting events in chronological order. So if you're talking about time, THEN. If you're talking about a comparison, THAN. Okay, how about affect with an A, effect with an E? Does anyone know the difference between those two?
The first one's a verb, and the second one talks about like what the, like for example, what a verb does to something.
Yes, exactly. So, effect with an E, what I would do is cause an effect. This is the effect, right? Effect is cause and effect. Affect is like what he said affected me. So like you're going to use affect as a verb. Exactly what was said. So good. How about less, fewer? Does anyone know that one? Where do you use less? Where do you use fewer? I don't know if they're teaching this one in schools anymore, so this one might be a little more tricky, but would you ever say like I just have fewer water in my water bottle? You wouldn't say fewer, right? You would say I have less water in my water bottle, right? The idea is fewer is for things that you can count and less is for things that you can't count. Granted, I understand that you can count the amount of water, right? With like, you can measure it, but you can't count it. You can't go to water and say like 1, 2, 3, that's 3 water. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? You can measure it. You can also, for example, like something that you would use fewer is like, oh, there's fewer stars in the sky tonight. Because if you looked at stars, you could go 1 star, 2 star, 3 stars. It would take you forever, but you can count stars. So if you can count it, fewer. If you can't count it, less. Does that make sense? Okay. Good. Last one of this that I want to mention is good and well. Does anyone know the difference between good and well? So like if someone asks you like how are you doing, do you say like I'm doing good or I'm doing well? If no one knows, that's okay. I'll talk about it. But you would say I'm doing well, not I'm doing good. And this happens all the time when we're talking. So it's different when you're speaking versus when you're doing it in a grammatical context. But well is an adverb. So you're saying it's the state of being. I'm doing well. That's what's going on with me. You could also say I'm in a good mood. So good is an adjective, whereas well is an adverb. So the state of being that you're in is I'm doing well. I'm doing well in this class. I'm whatever. Good is describing something directly. So he's a good singer. Good. But well is for like an adverb situation. I'm doing well. Does that make sense? It's the same with like bad and poor, basically. Like I'm doing poorly is better than I'm doing bad, right? Because poorly is an adverb. Okay, that's all the grammar rules. So next time we meet, we'll probably go into practicing and working on the process questions. So at this point, I would want you guys to, when you're going through tests and you're practicing, if you get a rule question wrong, refer back to the notes that we've taken these past 3 classes. See if you can find the rule. And if you can't, that's okay. Just bring it up to me next time we're in class. I'm always open for questions. But just look for it if you can and try to be better about your rules now. So now that you know these rules, see where you can apply them, see how well you can do when you're practicing. And then next time we'll get into group practice and process questions. So, awesome. If no one has any